Hello, my name is Lakeisha Jones, and this is my interpersonal communication project for Liberty University. Next slide. What is communicating? Communication can happen within relationships, within friends, in a classroom setting, on a job. Communication can happen within arguments. Communication can happen within speeches or presentations such as this. When we communicate interpersonally, we listen and we talk, we send and we receive, we take in as well as give off clues. Stewart states that this type of communication that happens when the presence of the personal are maximized. Next slide. There are 5 personals according to Stewart: uniqueness, immeasurability, responsiveness, reflectiveness, and addressability. When these 5 personals take place, interpersonal communication can happen. Next slide. Overarching goal. My overarching goal is to communicate more effectively, to become a better listener, to become a level 1 listener, to respond only when I have listened to my speakers in its entirety, to identify myself and my patterns within communicating. This glows only when it's beneficial to the conversation and to the present time. Next slide. Enlarging the conversation. Ways to enlarge the conversation. Enlarging the conversation allows you to build healthy relationships. Communication is not nothing new. It is something we've been doing since we came into this world. Enlarging the conversation improves our relationships. When I enlarge my conversation, I feel that it allows me to immerse myself in listening and talking. And when that happens, I am given the opportunity to modify, to tear down, to rebuild relationships within communicating, according to Stewart. Also, active listening. Active listening is a great way to enlarge one's conversation. According to Weger et al., 2010, active listening is defined as an attempt to demonstrate unconditional acceptance and unbiased reflection. Next slide. What happens when we communicate? Several different things happen when we communicate. Communication is considered to be part of our social being. Communicating and communication is the continuous, complex, the collaborative process of verbal and nonverbal meaning making, according to Stewart. We can at times develop a distorted view of things if all we experience is distance, objectives, impersonal communication. In turn, we will only see it one-sided. Next slide. Identify and development. When we experience close and not distant relationships, and when we feel support from others, it helps us to develop our human potential. The people that we come in contact with, according to Stewart, shape our identity, such as our parents, our friends, and our co-workers. When we communicate, we are negotiating our identities. Next slide. Identify ourself is made up of interlocking features that mark how we behave and how we respond to others. Stewart states that whenever we communicate, we want to influence our listeners. Stewart calls our listeners the audience, and we want to be able to influence our audience favorably of ourselves. Next slide. Process of communicating. Stewart uses the metaphor of breathing to explain how we receive and we release information. Inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling is what we take in, whereas exhaling is what we release. It is important to try to inhale without exhaling or vice versa, according to Stewart. Next slide. Selecting, organizing, interfering are processes that should be utilized when inhaling. Selecting is focusing only on the task at hand. Organizing is arranging or rearranging information so it could become clear and we can understand it. Inferring is when we conclude, which is bringing it to an end. Judge, which is making a stand for it ourselves or going beyond the evidence. Next slide. Listening. When we listen, we take in what someone else is saying. Listening is more than just hearing words. It is feeling what the speaker is feeling. It is giving your undivided attention. It's not being judgmental, but it is being empathetic. It's acknowledging the speaker. When we speak, we want to feel that we're heard and that someone is listening to us. Next slide. 4 aspects of communicating. Out of all the time one spends communicating with people, the most of the time is spent listening. Communication is broken down into 4 aspects according to Burley et al. Communication aspects are writing, which is 9%, reading, which is 16%, talking, which is 35%, and listening, which is 40%. Next slide. How do we listen? How we listen, who we listen to are important to becoming a better listener. It is critical that we listen to ourselves to be able to listen to others adequately. Listening to other people gives us information needed to make the most of our conversation, whereas listening to ourselves gives us information to act in our own best interest. Next slide. Levels of listening. Burley and Allen reveals that there are 3 levels of listening. However, we're only going to focus on one, which is the level 1 listening, which is the empathetic listener. When I listen empathetically, I am able to put myself in the position of the speaker and in hopes to understand and see where the speaker is coming from. I'm aware, I'm in the moment. I am letting the speaker know that I care and that I am concerned. I respond at times and reflect on what he or she is saying. Next slide. Listening at a level 1, you should use your focusing skills, which is when you give your attention to the speaker, and your posture. Face the speaker whenever possible. Eye contact. Look at your speaker and show your speaker that you're interested. Move responsibly. Make responsive sounds. Your body movement and facial expression shows that you are listening, according to Stewart. Next slide. Behavior blend. According to Carbonell 2008, understanding personality patterns is the key to improving your relationships and solving the people puzzle. When I took the behavior blend, CS is what was expected of me. IDS is what was me. Shy, submissive, influencing, inspiring, demanding, and determined. Next slide. Positive aspects. Some positive aspects of my personality blend are dominating, inspiring, and submissive. It is stated that I am positive and outgoing, but also I have the need to be loyal and support others. Although I may stand out in a crowd, I surprise people because I can be just as comfortable behind the scene. My passion is to care for people. I feel that the well-being of others is my priority. I lean towards being more active and task-oriented, as well as being both active and passive, people-oriented. Next slide. Negative aspects. Some negative aspects are I don't listen carefully, and I'm not too concerned about the things that I say and I do. I have heard many people say that I am hard to read. Burley et al. States that I am hard to read because I have 3 of the 4 motivations within me. Problems in planning and preparing. Sometimes too direct or demanding. Overuse my people's skills and convince people to do things that they may not do. Next slide. Behavioral and noise barriers. Hearing what I want to hear is a barrier for me when I don't put myself in the level 1 listening state. I will focus only on what I think is important. When you hear what you want to hear in a conversation, you have a tendency to be biased. To correct this, I have to do as Burley et al. Instructed and listen without filters and use active listening skills. Noise pollution. There are a lot of things that could be considered as noise pollution. Background noises, noises such as sirens, bright lights out of the dark, loud screams, or even pains in your body. Not fully focusing on the speaker, unfamiliar surroundings. To correct this, eliminate unnecessary noise. Focus skills, use your selecting skills and your organizing skills. Go a place where it may be comfortable for you and the speaker. Next slide. My plan of action. Let God lead me in all that I do. Dig deeper and focus more on details. Do more research. Become more aware of what I am saying and how I am saying it. Be cautious. Don't be controlling. Accept people for who they are. Be me in any situations. Thank you and God bless. References will follow.